Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to another episode of Manifesting Muslimah. I'm your host, Zara Pedersen. And in today's episode, I am going to answer the question as to why you have to keep restarting your journey or why you keep restarting your journey. You know, that thing that you've been trying to do for years, for months, whatever it might be. You feel like you keep having to restart. Like a very popular example here is your diet, your fitness journey, your weight loss, your toning fitness journey, whatever it might be. You're like, oh, but I started and then I stopped, and then I started and I stopped. That's a very, very popular, very known journey that I see a lot of people having to start and stop again and again. It could be with your entrepreneurial journey. Maybe you're trying to start a business and you find yourself maybe not having to restart as such, but you find yourselves going in and out of lulls where you take steps back and find yourself having to wait until you have the motivation and inspiration again to keep coming back to it. Maybe it's the book that you keep trying to write. You want to be an author and you keep sitting down to write, but then once you get started with a book, you might write a little bit and then you stop again. And then you feel like you have to write a new book and whatever. There's something, and there's something in your life because we've all had it. We've all had it at one point or another, or we're currently having it. Okay. None of us are immune to this at all. But there's something in your life where you're like, you keep starting that journey, but for whatever reason, even at the best of times, you find yourself not being able to see it through. You're not crossing that finish line. You're not achieving the goal, the success, the whatever it is that you want to achieve from that thing. You haven't been able to get to the point where it's rather just a maintenance, or you have been able to get to maintenance, but then it won't last long and you find yourself slipping again. Okay, so what is the reason? Why does that keep happening? My darling, I'm sorry to say, it's the mindset. I know, it's not as romantic and exciting. It's not something that we can just change in a moment by doing one thing. Yeah, I'm sorry. I know. Please don't stop this podcast episode just because of that. Like, please listen to the full episode because I will try and help, of course, as much as I possibly can on an episode. But we need to have this conversation. It needs to be had because I'm hoping that through this conversation, I can spark something within you that'll inspire you to finally sit down and get this done. Because you know what? You deserve it. You deserve to sort this out and get to the next chapter of your life in whatever journey it might be, whether it be with your fitness, your business, your family, your self-esteem, whatever it is, your nomad traveling chapter, your content creator side, whatever it is, you deserve to get to that point. And 9 times out of 10, the reason why you haven't got there is because of yourself and it's in your mind. So let's talk about what it is that I mean. So I'm going to use an example from my own experiences. As always, I've actually mentioned this, I think, once or twice before in previous episodes, but I'm going to do it again anyway because, one, we forget, and two, new people and whatever. So I'm going to use that as an example. So when I was a personal trainer, I could quite often recognize the people who would have some sort of success with the work they did with me. I could always usually see these people and recognize these people within the first consultation. Sometimes it would also be like the first session itself, because the consultation is kind of a special time, but then the first session of them actually working with me. And I could recognize these people by the way that they would talk about themselves, about their goal, about their abilities to hold themselves accountable, to see things through, to you just like all kinds of words that they would be using during our conversations would give me an insight into their mindset. And listen, I'm not saying that I knew all of these things as to the level that I know it today. I've definitely done a lot of growth and learnt a lot in the time since I was a personal trainer to what I do today. But even back then, even though I wasn't necessarily most conscious around it, I could recognize it. And I would also quite often with the people that wanted it, but didn't, that they'd come to see me and want to work with me, but their mindset wasn't quite ready. I would do a lot of mindset work with them because I recognized that in order for them to see the success that they wanted from the work they did with me, their mindset needed to change. Their perspective needed to be altered. Their words, their view on themselves, everything about the way that they approached training, weight loss. It was specifically weight loss that I did, or like mainly weight loss that I did for women at the time, which is why I say it that way. The way they talked about weight loss, the way that they talked about other women approach like achieving their goals, the way that they talked anything really, to me was like, if this is not changed, if this isn't different, I'm not going to be able to get you the success that you want. So it's very important for me to do that with you, to get you to where I want you to be and where you also ultimately want to be, even if your subconscious might be working against you. So that was like the time that I sort of really started recognizing how much of an impact mindset had on all of us, even to the point of like whether or not somebody could learn to do a push-up, whether or not somebody could lift heavy weights, whether or not somebody could learn how to run fast, right? It all came to the mindset. And oh my God, I know. And I've said it before, but I keep cringing every time I have to use this example because it is such a cringy sort of saying it's become, I feel like at least. But there's that very famous saying, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you are right. And that is also something that goes very, very heavily into this subject with mindset because it starts there. It starts with your mind. And if you think you can do something, you'll be able to do it. If you think you can't, you're going to struggle or you're going to fail. And it's going to be much less enjoyable than if you just say, hey, I can do that. Yeah, it might be difficult, but I can do it. You might recognize that from something in your life where you're like, oh, yeah, I guess that's kind of true because I've done it there or I've experienced it here or whatever. Or I've seen it with my children or with my husband or whatever. But it's the truth. It's so true. And it's so relevant to us also to keep this in mind when we set bigger goals for ourselves. Some goals that might take some perseverance, persistence, consistency. That might take a while for us to get there. So that might take some effort and work from our side in order for us to get to that other side where we can say, yeah, we did that. So you might think to yourself, no, but Zara, I do want it. But I still, even though I want it and I think I can do it, it still is not happening. And this is where the subconscious comes into play, right? This is where it becomes more than just saying affirmations to yourself and repeating like just cutesy little mantras and whatever. It becomes about more than that because we need to work on deeper levels. We need to access things that we don't generally tend to access on a daily basis. We need to get into the nitty-gritty parts of our minds that are not always places that we necessarily want to go into because sometimes it's ugly. Sometimes it's uncomfortable. Sometimes there's just some things in there that can be quite upsetting to us or hurt us or be rooted in pain and trauma. And so we don't always want to go into that. It's not like, oh, it's just a regular Tuesday evening and I've got nothing better to do. Hey, let me sit down and delve into my subconscious mind and see what's going on in there. No, that's not how we do it. Because it can be uncomfortable and we don't always know what we're going to find. And sometimes it's difficult to face the things we're going to find. But it is very important for us to set aside time to learn, to get to know ourselves, and to understand what's actually happening inside of our minds. Because here's the thing, I want a lot of things in this dunya. I want a lot of things in the akhirah, right? But specifically speaking to this dunya right now, there's a lot of things that I want. And it doesn't have to be, by the way, material. It could also be religiously. There's a lot of things that I want religiously, even in terms of like with my salah, with my dhikr, with my closeness to Allah. And my subconscious sometimes will still get in the way of that. I'm going to I'm going to like just kind of maybe bare my soul here a little bit with you guys. But, I'm cool with that. If you're cool with it, I'm going to continue. So, one of my biggest struggles is that while having been born into a Muslim household and raised Muslim, I diverted. I pretty much left Islam for a good decade, and I did horrible things. I sinned a lot, and I did a lot of things that, they're not my proudest moments in life. And yeah, I can look back and cringe at myself and all these things. But I also will still recognize that that's the journey that got me to where I am today. So there's some type of gratitude or something. I don't even know if that's the word, but there's some type of something in there that's like, okay, but it got me to where I am, and I'm glad for where I am because, you know what, even just saying that, I'm like, wait a minute, Allah got me to where I am because he's the one who called me back. I didn't, Anyway, that's a whole conversation for another time. But anyway, and so sometimes as a revert to Islam and really working hard on my deen and protecting my religion and my relationship with Allah, and sometimes struggling to come to prayer and things, there's a lot of guilt still sometimes inside me, and there can be a lot of things that can keep me from just doing the things easy peasy lemon squeezy every single time. I love coming to prayer. I do. I find so much peace and comfort at prayer, but I still struggle sometimes with prayer because a part of me feels like I don't deserve it. I don't deserve that love from Allah because of my past, right? And this is not a conscious thought. By the way, remember this. This is not a conscious thought that I think to myself. This is something that I have come to realize by doing some work on my mindset, okay? By doing some work and getting to know myself and getting to know and understand why sometimes I struggle to come to prayer. Because my conscious mind is come to prayer because that's where you come to success. Hayya ala salah, hayya ala al-falah, come to prayer, come to success, right? That's where my success is in this dunya and in the akhirah, inshallah, right? That's where I can strengthen my bond and my relationship with Allah. This is where the good things happen. This is where every blessing will come from in the five salahs, right? I know this, I recognize this, and there's so much joy and blessing, so much gratitude in being able to come to prayer because not everybody can. So much privilege and recognition of that privilege. However, I will still find myself sometimes struggling to come to prayer, and I had to sit with it, and I had to sit and be really vulnerable with myself and say, why? Why am I struggling with this? And I recognized that it was because there's some guilt and shame that is rooted in my past that makes me feel undeserving at times. And sometimes that'll rear its ugly little head and it'll make me pause. It'll make me slow down. It'll make me hesitate to come to prayer, right? And of course, logically speaking, I know this is absolutely not the case, and it shouldn't be the case for anyone, right? Like if anybody came to me and said the same thing, I'd be like, girl, stop. Allah loves you, and Allah loves that you're coming to prayer, even with all of your perceived flaws and whatever might, be holding you back from your past or feels like holds you back from the past. But we all have this to us, right? To, where our mindset and our subconscious will tell us things, where shaitan will come in and he'll really like whisper in your ear and make it feel tenfold as bad and as difficult as it otherwise would feel on a normal day, right? But it's normal. But here's the thing that I want you to understand. If I had not sat down and done the work with myself on my mind, I would struggle even more coming to prayer because I wouldn't know what it was. I would be, fighting against or pushing against an unknown element. I don't even know why I'm struggling. So I don't know why I don't want to come to prayer. It must be because I'm a bad Muslim. It must be because Allah doesn't want me to come to prayer. It must be because I'm not meant to pray. It must be, I would have drawn all sorts of conclusions that would make me feel unworthy, that would make me feel like I'm not meant to come to prayer, that would make me feel like Allah doesn't love me. Do you see where I'm going with this? And of course, none of this is true. None of this is true. And I know this because I've done the work. I know this because I've sat down and done some uncomfortable work with myself and had to have some uncomfortable realizations. But at least now when I'm having these moments of hesitations, I know where it's coming from. And I know it's not from Allah. I know it's not from Allah. I know it's not coming from Allah saying it's because you're not meant to pray to me. It's because I don't want you to pray to me. It's because you're not meant to be a Muslim. I know it's because it's coming from myself and my own insecurities, my own sense of not being valuable. And as a result, it's easier for me to push back because I can set myself aside for the sake of Allah, but I cannot set aside Allah for me. Do you see what I mean? So doing that mindset work for me was invaluable, even in terms of my deen. And I'm going to use another example as well here in terms of my business. So let's use something that isn't salah. And so you're like, yeah, but my thing isn't necessarily to do with Allah. Everything has to do with Allah, first and foremost. Everything has to do with Allah, in case you're questioning that or wondering. So I'm going to use my example of my business. Right? I need to make money. I need to pay a rent. Well, actually, right now, I don't need to pay a rent. I live rent free. That's actually something that I also need to speak to you guys about, but that'll be a TikTok video, not a podcast episode, because that's also something I've manifested through Allah's help. But you know, I've got bills. I got to eat food. I've got 2 dogs that I need to take care of, and I like to go out and I, do things. So I need to make an income. And, I've had not a lot, but a little bit of pushback from some people in the community, like, how dare you charge, how dare you charge for your services? If you truly want to help people, you should just give this stuff away for free. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll do that when I don't have to pay anything, when I've got somebody else paying for me. And by the way, I'm single. If you've got somebody, they have to be able to provide fully. And also, if I know someone I'm not interested, I'm going to send them your way. It's cool. We got each other's back, sis. We've got each other's back. Okay, anyway. So is it annoying that I make myself laugh? I don't know if it is. Anyway, so, I, for a long time, because I've worked within the Muslim community now for over 10 years. And always marketed myself as a coach for Muslim women specifically, because I don't work with men. I don't want to. So I've always had that kind of pushback from people in one way or another, where people are like, oh, you should just do it, fi sabilillah. I'm like, girl, will you pay my rent, pay my bills, fi sabilillah? But there was a time where it really made me feel insecure about charging for my services. It really made me feel like a bad person for charging to be a coach, for charging people to, help them create a better relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And, even when I wasn't doing that, when I was doing personal training and nutrition help advice for people, it was like, but I'm just trying to help people be better and be happier and live better lives and, achieve the things they want in this life and whatever. And I'd feel sometimes so triggered and so hurt, like, oh, maybe I'm doing it wrong. Maybe I should be doing this for free. Maybe I shouldn't charge and whatever. And again, it came down to my mindset, because they were pushing into something or prodding something. This is why I said the word trigger. They were prodding something that was already in myself, an insecurity within myself that made me feel like maybe I shouldn't charge. Maybe I'm not worthy of charging. Maybe I should be doing this for free. Because if I genuinely care and want to help someone, I should be giving it away for free. If somebody genuinely wants to help me, they should want to give it away for free. And I don't want to be greedy. And these were the kinds of thoughts that I was having subconsciously. right? They weren't conscious. Consciously, I understood why I had to charge because, there are bills and cost of living and it's only going up. Inflation is a real thing. And so logically and consciously, I understood why I charged. But subconsciously, there was a part of me that was really questioning the validity of my charging. Maybe I was too expensive, even though I've always actually been on a relatively cheap side. I'm cheap, what can I say? But, in comparison to a lot of other people, at least. But there was a part of me that was really struggling to make the two things go hand in hand. Like, how can I help somebody and also charge for it? It sometimes will rear its little ugly head from time to time, even to this day. But because I've done mindset work around it, I've done the work, I've worked with my subconscious, I know what I am pushing against. And again, it's a very small thing that I'm pushing against. But if I didn't know that, it would feel like a very difficult thing to push against. And it would fester inside me and it would grow bigger and it would make itself appear bigger than it actually is. So now it's easier for me to, whenever I get those thoughts, to be like, no, as one of my favorite online coaches, Denise DT, says, I serve, I deserve, I'm allowed to charge for my services because I am giving you something that can help you get to the next stage in your life. And so I should also be able, as a result, to get to the next stages in my life. And if that means being able to pay my bills comfortably, then so be it, And so I'm going to come to now the part where I say, oh, but Zara, that has nothing to do with Allah, but it's more difficult because it has nothing to do with my relationship with Allah. But it does, though. It actually does, because every aspect of this dunya and our life has to do with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because Allah is to his servant what we think of him, right? And if we believe ourselves to only have to struggle and fight and work really hard to get from one place to the next, it can be a little bit difficult to find gratitude and patience and love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If we feel like, but why does it have to be so difficult? And Allah's like, it doesn't. It actually doesn't have to be that difficult, but you're making it difficult. Then, that's on us. That's on us. And so everything in our life comes back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and our religion. So even something as me having a business that I love and thrive in and succeed in and make money in has to do with my relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it has to do with my ability to come to Allah, not just to complain and with frustration and stress, but with gratitude and love and appreciation. Right? Because life suddenly is not just to suffer for, it's also to be enjoyed in this dunya and find, inshallah, more enjoyment in the akhirah for all of us, right? So yes, even something like wanting to lose weight, wanting to make more money, wanting to live in a bigger house, wanting to drive a nice car, wanting to have a beautiful husband and wonderful kids, all of these things still, one way or another, will link back to your relationship with Allah and your willingness to serve him from a place of love and appreciation rather than force and a place of, well, I should. I think we've all been there once or twice in our lives at least. Experience that side of it, and it's not fun. It's not fun. None of us want to be there. But ultimately, getting back to where we started from, it comes to you also knowing yourself. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, but do they not reflect upon themselves? Do they not reflect upon themselves? What do you think that means? To me, it can mean a lot of things, of course. But to me, it also speaks into our ability to look inwards. Not everything is coming from outside. The fact that somebody said something to you that pushed you off was only because there was already something inside you that actually believed it. And so the fact that they said it triggered it, and you didn't learn or you didn't know how to push back. And so you gave up. I'm not coming for you, sis. I know it can sound like that when I say it that way, but I'm really not coming for you. I'm trying to put it into that perspective so you understand and acknowledge that the power will always lie within yourself, as long as you rest upon Allah, of course. Allah is the strength. We lean on His strength. But ultimately, we should not be leaning on the strength and willpower and everybody else around us in our society and our environment's ability to keep us on track. We have to rely on our own ability to keep ourselves on track, and we will rest on the strength of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the certainty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? So if you're struggling with something and you feel yourself having to restart on your journey time and time again, and you're like, but I've tried this 100 times and it's still not happening. I'm willing to bet my right boot, but it's haram to bet. But I am almost 100% certain that it's because there is something in your mindset that is working against you. And it could be something like, as I said, a past trauma that you thought you dealt with, but in reality, you maybe just buried it and kind of kept it going. And again, maybe I'm calling you out a little bit here because a lot of us do this. We don't seek help. We don't seek to work on it. We just be like, time will pass. And as time passes, it's easier for me to live with it, but it's not quite dealt with. And as a result, we're carrying this trauma with us in a very unhealthy way. That means that our mindset just carries it as like, this is the lesson and I will carry it with me, and this is the way that I am from now on, rather than saying, oh, I learned something from this, great, but it doesn't define me. It doesn't define my next experiences with that type of people, in these circumstances, with these experiences, so on and so forth. So it could be a past trauma, it could be a memory, it could be a relationship from the past, and it will have taught you something, or you'll have picked up on something from the past and never really questioned it, never really done the work to be like, but is it true? Is it true always, without question? And the truth to that is that no, it isn't. It's not always the truth, because everything is relative. And so even your biggest truths sometimes are not even truths. Even Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes countless examples of this in the Quran. We know it to be a truth that it is haram to eat pork, right? We know this. You can't eat pig. Pig is haram. And yet, even in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, but if you should find yourself in a position where that is all you can eat, and that is the difference between you living or dying, then we will forgive it. You're allowed. It is permissible in these cases, right? Of course, we very rarely would find ourselves in this position. But see, perspective, it's even the biggest of truths sometimes. It's a perspective, right? It's based on, the situation, right? And that's not me saying, by the way, go out and eat pork at all. Please don't. But what I am saying is that even Allah, in everything, I will use another example. The unforgivable sin, committing shirk. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, it is an unforgivable sin if you put something as the same status as Allah. You put partners to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And yet, in the same sentence, Allah says it's the unforgivable sin and cannot be forgiven. However, if you ask for my forgiveness, surely I will grant it. Subhanallah. So I'm just putting it out there. You do with this information as you want. Again, don't go out there and commit shirk. Don't go out and eat pork. Don't do any of these things. I'm just saying that sometimes even the undeniable truths that we know from Allah can be bent in certain cases, can be shaped, can be modified, can be whatever you want to call it. And so your mind, the truths that you hold on to in your mind can equally be changed and rearranged. And the truths don't always have to be truths all the time. Sometimes the truth was only a truth in that specific case, but you don't have to hold on to it going forward. Okay. I want to leave you with a resource that you can use if you want to start using, if you want to start working with your mindset. It is my online course. It's called Belief Breakthrough. You can find it in my Stan store. I'll link it in the show notes, but you'll also find it through the link in my bio on Instagram and on TikTok. It costs $79.99, just for transparency here. It's a one-time payment, and you'll have the course for life. But in this course, I take you through how you can identify the things that are happening in your mind, how you can disarm it, and then replace it with something that is far more helpful and beneficial to you in your journey going forward. And as a result of doing this course and doing this work on your mindset, you will find yourself having to restart the different chapters of your life much less. You will have greater success because you've done the actual work. You don't have to keep restarting. It is not necessary for you to keep restarting. The restart is, it holds no benefit. There is nothing in the restart for you. So if you don't want to restart your journey, regardless of what it is for a journey that you are on currently, if you don't want to do it, this is the work you need to do. And the course can help you get through that work, get to the other side, and then start a life where you don't have to restart every single time, every single month, every single year. So that is going to be linked in the show notes. As I said, it's £79.99, British pounds, by the way, just to let you know. It's an online course and you'll have access to it for a lifetime. Like, it's not going anywhere. So yeah, that'll be linked. And also, if you prefer working with me, directly, and not through a course, you can also go and book a one-on-one coaching session with me. I'll also link that in the show notes, and it's also linked everywhere that I can link everything. And it's more expensive. So oh my God, I'm so bad at selling. Look at me, because I'm actually going to downsell you right now, because I was going to be like, it's more expensive, which it is. It is £111. You're actually going to get everything you need in the course. So I'd actually direct you, if it's a mindset thing, I'd actually direct you to the course first. And if the course still has something where you're like, but it didn't touch on this specific for me, then you can book a one-on-one with me. But I would actually direct you to the course first. I know I should be upselling you. I should be like, no, go to the one-on-one, because that would make me more money. But no, go to the course. The course has what you need. Do the course, my darling. All right, my love. I would love to hear your thoughts on this. I'd love to hear your aha moments, if you had any in this episode. And of course, I would love your feedback, your suggestions for future episodes, all of that good stuff. Reach out to me over on Instagram at Manifesting Muslima. And I say Instagram specifically because I can send voice notes, and I just would prefer that rather than texting. So reach out to me if you've got anything, or just want to say hi, or just want to let me know that you're listening and where you're listening from. I love hearing from you. And of course, don't forget to like this podcast, follow, subscribe, all that stuff, but also review it. I'd love to do that. If you could do that for me, that really will help the podcast greatly coming into the future. All right, my darling, I will leave you here and I will see you inshallah on Thursday for the next episode. But until then, my darling friend, please don't forget to live in love.